The story of how John Wick went shopping at 7-Eleven, but found himself embroiled in a loud conflict with an elderly woman who was outraged by prices, regulations, and modern realities. Their argument attracted a crowd, turned into a philosophical dialogue about generations, respect and life, and eventually turned into an instructive lesson for both, showing that true strength lies in understanding and humanity. The automatic door of the 7-Eleven opened with a soft hiss, releasing the faint smell of coffee and hot dogs into the cool evening. John Wick stepped inside, adjusting the collar of his black coat slightly. The store was almost empty, a couple of students at the energy drink cooler, a man in a plaid shirt examining chips, a cashier idly scrolling through something on his phone. John picked up a small basket and headed along the shelves. He wasn't here for an impulse purchase, he had a clear list. Milk. Eggs. Coffee. Dog food. He could have stopped at a larger supermarket, but 7-Eleven was closer, and most importantly, quieter. Over the years, silence had become something valuable. He walked silently to the refrigerated section and opened the glass door. Cold air washed over his face. John took out a bottle of milk, then dropped it into the basket. Everything was simple, no fuss. He turned to walk on, but then noticed movement out of the corner of his eye. A small figure in a purple cardigan appeared in front of him out of nowhere. An elderly woman, probably in her 70s, with thick gray hair styled in a neat wave, was staring at him through gold-rimmed glasses. "You just got the last of the milk." Her voice was loud and confident. John looked at her for a moment. "Yes. So what now?" She frowned, crossing her arms over her chest. John raised an eyebrow slightly, but said nothing. This was clearly not a conversation that needed to be prolonged. "Young man, do you even know what you're doing?" Her voice became a little louder. Now the cashier stopped scrolling through her phone and glanced furtively in their direction. John glanced at the bottle in his basket. "I'll just buy some milk." "Just buy some?" "Just?" Granny threw up her hands. "I need milk every morning. I drink it with my coffee. With my porridge. Even with my medicine." "What, do you think you need it more?" John inhaled through his nose, exhaled slowly. "There's cream in the store, alternative milk." "Cream? Are you suggesting that I, a respected woman, drink coffee with cream?" She took a step forward, poking her finger into his chest. "Or maybe I should try that trendy almond drink of yours. Or coconut milk that tastes like soap." John was silent. "You know what's the worst thing? You young people don't respect your elders. You think you can just walk in and take the last milk without even thinking about others. That didn't happen in my time." "You mean that when you were young, people didn't buy the last milk?" "When I was young, people thought of others first," she said proudly. The crowd around them began to grow. Several people stood frozen in the aisles, watching the confrontation unfold. John glanced at the cashier. He just shrugged, clearly not wanting to get involved. "I've worked all my life." Granny continued. "I raised 3 children, now I have 5 grandchildren. And now I can't get regular milk. Are you one of those people who thinks that old people should just sit at home and keep quiet?" "No," John replied. "Yeah, right. I know people like you. You're all the same. Young, always in black, with those serious faces of yours. As if life were a movie." John remained silent. "Oh. And don't even tell me you work in an office or something important. You probably..." She narrowed her eyes, looking him over from head to toe. "What do you do for a living?" John looked at her. "Security guard." "Ha. Of course." Granny crossed her arms. "I get it. You're one of those tough guys, right? I've seen them. Important, serious, think the whole world is at their feet. But you know what I'll tell you? Real men are those who know how to be kind. Not those who take milk from grannies. John took a deep breath. Do you really need this milk that much? Of course. A moment of silence. He silently handed her the bottle. Granny pursed her lips, but then took it back with a satisfied look. That's better. She had already turned around, but suddenly stopped, rummaged in her bag and thrust a small caramel into his hand. Here. For the future. Maybe you'll learn to be a little softer. John looked at the candy, then at her. The crowd dispersed. He remained standing by the refrigerated section, and Granny walked proudly to the checkout, leaving behind a light scent of lavender and victory. Like and subscribe so I know if you liked the story or not. John stood at the refrigerated section, holding a caramel in his hand. It was in a shiny gold wrapper, small as this strange encounter itself. Grandma, pleased with her victory, headed for the checkout. It seemed the incident was over. But it was not. Wait a minute, she suddenly said. John looked up. She was looking at him again, but this time she was narrowing her eyes, with a new spark of indignation. Aren't you here for the milk? John bowed his head slightly. What do you mean? What do you mean, if you didn't really need it, why did you even take it? The crowd, which had just begun to disperse, froze again. I just came for groceries. Oh, of course. Just came. Grandma stepped back toward him, clutching a bottle of milk in her hand. Are you one of those people who grabs everything and then throws it at the checkout? Oh, I changed my mind, I don't want the milk, I'll leave it right here. I see people like that every day. They walk in, fill their baskets, and then leave, as if the supermarket is their personal playground. I was going to buy it. Oh, I was going to. She measured him with a glance. Well, yes, of course. And now that you've given it away so easily, it means you didn't really want it. John sighed and exhaled slowly through his nose. Do you need milk? You got it. The conflict is resolved. Resolved? Are you serious? Granny threw up her hands indignantly. Do you even understand how that looked from the outside? A young man comes, takes the last milk, and then, like a benefactor, graciously gives it away. You just made me look like a begging granny. You asked for it yourself. I didn't ask, I demanded. These are different things. The cashier snorted involuntarily, but then pretended that dust had just gotten into his nose. Oh, have you ever heard of respect? Or are you one of those who do everything with a stone face, thinking that it makes them cooler? John looked at her calmly. Do you often get into conflicts over products? Only when someone takes the last thing. She said. And also when someone pushes ahead in line, takes too many bags, puts the basket on the checkout incorrectly. She began bending her fingers. When they leave carts in the middle of the aisle, don't put dividers on the conveyor belt, use coupons that have already expired. I get it. No, you don't get it. Have you ever had a situation where you come to the store for something specific, and it's not there? Yes. And what do you feel? Irritation. Here. She poked her finger at him. So you understand. So you should have guessed that if a grandmother is standing in front of you and her eyes are burning with hatred, maybe she had plans for this milk. I can't read minds. Oh, so you're logical. She crossed her arms again. Like, I'm not a psychic, so I don't have to take into account the emotions of others. You know who you remind me of? My grandson. Your grandson? Yes. He's just as serious, everything he does is factual, zero emotions. I tell him, Andriusha, put on a scarf, it's cold. And he tells me, Grandma, I have thermoregulation. What is that anyway? Thermoregulation. The body's ability to maintain an optimal temperature. Granny threw up her hands. Of course. Another, smart guy. You young people are like that. Everything has to be logical, everything has to make sense. And have you ever thought that sometimes people say things not because they are scientifically proven, but because they care? John frowned slightly. Are you saying that you care about me now? No. I want to say that you should be more attentive to others. Otherwise, one day they won't just tell you that you took someone's milk. What will happen? She narrows her eyes. You will be cursed. There was silence in the supermarket. Even the cashier raised his head slightly. Cursed. Exactly. I am, of course, a good-natured woman, but believe me, if you spoil my mood, trouble is inevitable. John looked at her. Do you often curse people? Only when someone takes the last of the milk. She proudly adjusted her cardigan and turned away, heading for the checkout. John remained standing, holding a caramel in his hand. Hey! Her voice rang out again. He looked up slowly. You also forgot to get dog food. John blinked. What? You came to get it, didn't you? I saw you looking at this corner. You have a dog. Yes. Well, go and get her some food. Or do you want her to go hungry? No. Well, go then. I can see you're responsible. At least for her. She turned back to the checkout. John just stood there for a few seconds, then silently headed for the shelf with dog food. For some reason, he felt like this wasn't the end. John stood at the shelf with dog food, looking at the rows of packages with different flavors, beef, chicken, salmon. He took a familiar pack and headed to the checkout, hoping that the conflict was finally over. But as soon as he got closer, a familiar voice cut through the air. Of course. Beef for adult dogs. John closed his eyes for a second. Then he slowly turned around. Granny was standing near the checkout belt, holding a bottle of milk, and looked at him as if he had just confessed to some heinous crime. Are you serious? You give this to your dog? The crowd began to gather again. Even the students with energy drinks put down the cans and moved closer. John exhaled through his nose. What's the problem? What's the problem? Did you even read the ingredients? Granny put her hands on her hips. Do you know how much chemistry there is in it? GMOs. Soy, corn starch. Do you even think about your dog's health? John glanced at the packaging. He likes this food. Of course. If you only give a child chocolate and soda, he will be happy too. But that doesn't mean it's healthy. He's not a child. Of course. Are you one of those who thinks that a dog is just a pet? She frowned. But my late husband. John closed his eyes. Was a veterinarian? No. But he knew how to feed dogs. A real man should take care of his animals. The cashier raised an eyebrow again. Tell me what's good about this food. A complete balance of proteins and fats, contains vitamins. Oh, here we go. He has balance. Did you know that I've fed my dogs only natural meat their entire lives? That's an option, too. There. There. So you understand. And if you understand, why do you continue to poison the poor dog with this chemical waste? It's not chemical waste. What are you talking about? Look at this. She snatched the package from his hands, turned it over and, putting on her glasses, began to read the ingredients. Animal protein, yeah, fiber, preservatives. What is this? Preservatives. I know these are preservatives. John sighed heavily. They're not harmful substances. They extend the shelf life. Oh, of course. They're probably really good for you. Maybe I should eat some too. I wouldn't recommend it. Granny rolled her eyes dramatically. Of course, you're a smart guy. Everything you do is factual. Have you ever tried the food you buy for your dog? John slowly raised an eyebrow. No. That's a shame. Have you tried it? She froze. That's not the point. So you haven't tried it. What difference does it make? I'm not a dog. The crowd held back their laughter. Okay, smart guy, let's say I'll forgive you for this sin. But... She raised a finger. Now tell me this. How many times a day do you feed him? Twice. Grandma gasped. 2. Yes. But it's a famine. Is he still alive? He's happy. Did he tell you about it? John blinked. He wags his tail. That's it, I can't take it anymore. Granny turned to the cashier. Young man, can you explain to him that dogs need to be fed 3 times a day? The cashier looked at John, then back at Granny. I love cats. Well, I get it. The world is going to hell. Nobody understands anything. When I was young, everyone had dogs, and nobody tortured them with this protein balance. John groaned quietly. Do you at least give him meat? Yes. What kind? Beef. So. That's better. But not every day. What? She pressed her hand to her chest. Poor animal. He's had enough. If someone told you, here, eat 1 chicken leg, and that'll last you a day, would you be happy? John thought about it. If it's a good chicken leg. Oh, of course. You're a philosopher, then. Okay, I get it. You're hopeless. She sighed and waved her hand. Do whatever you want, but know this, your dog deserves better. John looked at her, then at the cashier, then back at the food. Maybe I should return the milk, too. Grandma gave him a look. No. I deserved it. John shook his head. You're a real test. And you're stubborn. She turned proudly and began to lay out her groceries. The crowd began to disperse again, but the students were still whispering to the side, clearly delighted with what they had seen. The cashier sighed and ordered the granny's milk. That'll be $3. $3? For what? Last time it was $2.50. John, hearing this, closed his eyes and rubbed the bridge of his nose. It looks like the conflict won't end anytime soon. John was about to pay and leave when he heard a familiar menacing voice. $3. The crowd, which had just begun to disperse, tensed up again. The cashier sighed. John slowly turned his head. Granny stood at the checkout, clutching a bottle of milk, and looked at the cashier as if he had just personally committed a financial crime against her. Look, young man, you may have worked here, but I've been in this store for a while too. Last time this milk cost $2.50. The cashier tiredly scratched the back of his head. The prices went up, ma'am. What do you mean, grew? Why all of a sudden? I don't see a sign here that says, we raised our prices because we wanted to. Inflation, ma'am. Inflation? Oh, of course. I remember them saying the same thing in the 90s, and guess what I did? I bought milk for $1. John took a deep breath. You're making a fuss over 50 cents. On principle. They're going to ruin you. It's not about money. It's about fairness. I can pay. No. She turned on him sharply. Don't think I'm going to take your handouts, Mr. I survived the test. I'm not fighting for myself, I'm fighting for everyone who comes here and doesn't want to be treated like milk cows. You're fighting the price of milk. Yes. What do you think we should do? Just endure it? That's how it all starts. First milk will go up in price, then bread, then potatoes, and then we'll all be eating air. That's a pretty grim scenario. Realistic. She turned back to the cashier. Listen, young man. Do you have a grandma? Yeah. And she pays for the milk, too? Well, yeah. So. Just imagine her coming into the store, all excited, wanting to get some milk, and then bam, $3. The cashier shrugged. She'll just buy the milk. Oh, my God. The grandma put her hand to her forehead. You still don't get it. This is all a scam. They think we'll just buy milk until it's $5. Well, yeah. That won't do. John exhaled heavily. Are you going to organize a protest? What if we do? In front of the store. I'll at least write a petition. About milk. Are you kidding? No. Do you know what the worst thing is? People like you pay in silence. You, John. Do you remember my name? Of course. Do you think I haven't heard what they called you? Oh, that's John Wick, the students whispered. She narrowed her eyes. Are you a celebrity? Something like that. Do celebrities buy milk too? Yes. And you don't mind the $3? No. Of course. The rich have their own quirks. She sighed and looked up at the ceiling. Okay then. Let it be $3. But know this, you just became part of this injustice. She gave the money to the cashier, who hurried to print the receipt, clearly hoping that this would end the conflict. But no. And where is my age discount? The cashier almost dropped the cash register. We don't have such discounts. What do you mean, no? They do at $3. But we don't. Well, I'm outraged. She turned to the crowd. Did you all hear that? No discounts for seniors. Where are we heading? The crowd was silent. John whispered quietly. Okay, what if I pay? No. She grabbed the milk and headed for the exit, grumbling loudly. Where is this world heading? That's it, I'm leaving. I don't want to see this supermarket anymore. The crowd began to disperse. John finally got his item checked. The cashier sighed with relief. Thanks for not getting into an argument. If I had, it would have never ended. John took the bag, turned around, and... Hey! He closed his eyes. Granny was standing at the entrance again. Did you at least get some normal food? John looked at the bag, then back at her. Yeah. Good girl. At least you learned something. She proudly turned around and left. John exhaled and headed for the exit. It was the longest trip to the supermarket in his life. The crowd had already begun to disperse, and inside the store there was an atmosphere of understatement and change. John, holding a bag in his hands, still felt a slight aftertaste of the recent conflict, when suddenly his gaze stopped on the granny, who was standing at the far end of the counter and quietly talking to the young cashier. Something new flashed in her eyes, a mixture of bitterness and determination, but also a tired wisdom accumulated over years of fighting injustice. Coming closer, John heard the granny gently but firmly address the cashier. Listen, honey, I do not demand miracles. I just want people of the older generation to be respected. I demand that every customer and employee understand that behind every number, behind every price tag there is a human life, with its joys, fears and experiences. Her voice did not sound like it did in moments of anger, but calmly, gaining confidence. John remembered all the moments of recent disputes, milk, feed, prices, accusations and jokes. In each of these small, seemingly absurd conflicts, there was a big problem, misunderstanding between generations, injustice, loss of simple human values. Granny continued. I understand that the world is changing. I see how young people are absorbed by technology, how everything is becoming faster and more cynical. But believe me, even in this hectic flow of life, kindness, attention and mutual respect are important. We were all young, and we also had to fight for our place in the sun. So I want you, young man, to remember, even if you are a great fighter, even if the whole world relies on your skills, true strength is measured not only by the strength of your fist, but also by the ability to support, understand, give way a little to the feelings of others. John, usually so reserved and unperturbed, felt his heart squeeze at these words. He thought about how every action, every little thing he did could reflect not only his personal history, but also affect those around him. He remembered how in moments of battle and combat he had to make decisions that cost lives. Now he stood here, in the supermarket, in front of a woman whose gaze, full of determination and passion, opened up new facets of the world to him. Taking a few steps towards Granny, John said softly, "I am grateful to you for the lesson. Today I realize that even in the most ordinary situation you can find meaning. Maybe I can't change the whole world, but I promise that I will try to be more attentive to the people around me." Granny looked up, her wrinkles seemed to retreat in surprised satisfaction. A quiet but sincere smile appeared on her lips. "Go, John. Let this day be a reminder, in a world full of conflicts, it is worth finding a way to hear each other. Sometimes even one gesture of attention can change someone's life." Her words sounded like a silent prayer, like a wish for peace for everyone who dares to be honest and kind. The cashier, who had been watching with apprehension until then, couldn't help but smile, realizing that even in conditions of constant disagreement, a path to agreement can be found. John slowly walked back to the exit, looking back, as if trying to capture this moment, this change in the atmosphere of the store. The evening sky was shining outside the door, and the coolness of the street seemed like some kind of new beginning. He understood that every confrontation, even the most absurd and ridiculous, carries a lesson. Perhaps this incident with Granny will become such a lesson for him, a lesson that real strength is not only in the ability to defeat enemies, but also in the ability to recognize your vulnerability and take a step towards others. Outside the store, people continued on their way, hurrying home or to work, unaware of the important changes that can happen thanks to a chance meeting. Someone will hear Grandma's words and remember how important it is to support those around you, and someone, like John, will realize that in a world where everyone is busy with their own affairs, there is a place for small miracles and genuine care. And so, passing through the automatic door of 7-Eleven, John Wick turned around once more, looking at the shop windows that reflected the lights of the city and the smiles of random passers-by. He realized, life is not only fight scenes and tense moments. Life is the art of listening, understanding and accepting. And every such moment, even if it begins as a scandal over the last milk or dog food, can turn into an instructive story that makes us all a little better. To the quiet rustle of closing doors, to the measured hum of street lights, John walked on, leaving behind not just a supermarket, but a small island where respect and humanity could overcome even the most violent emotions. That's how the day ended, not with a loud finale with deafening explosions, but a quiet but confident step towards understanding that there are no losers in the world if we are all ready to listen and support each other.